Hello and welcome to News by Standards. The widow of a farmer murdered by the IRA has warned the government not to trample on victims as MPs prepare to vote on the government's Troubles legislation. The bill offers an amnesty to those accused of killings and other Troubles-related crimes. The debate and vote comes almost to the day that Iris Moffett Scott marks the 39th anniversary of her husband Melvin's murder. He was shot in his tractor in 1983. No one has ever been convicted for the murder of the 36-year-old father of four who was cutting hedges near Oman at the time. The killing was blamed on the IRA. That day, Melvin put my youngest son on the bus for his first day at school, and he never saw his daddy alive again, says Mrs. Moffett Scott. He was a 36-year-old farmer doing a day's work when he was murdered by Republican terrorists. Those brave men who shot an unarmed civilian in the back never had the courage to admit to the murder. The government's contentious Troubles legacy bill is starting its committee stage in the Commons, meaning amendments can be debated in the chamber. Northern Ireland Troubles legacy bill published by the UK government. The Democratic Unionist Party DUP Alliance and SDLP opposed the bill and have put forward proposals, but not all will be chosen for a vote. Mrs. Moffett Scott said victims across Northern Ireland were not even an afterthought for the government. I'd ask the British government to put victims where they should be and don't trample on them and don't treat them differently than victims of terrorism in any other British city, she said. I would invite Boris Johnson to look at my children and grandchildren in the eye to see the impact and the suffering of putting terrorists before victims. Mrs. Moffett Scott also said the focus should remain on the lack of truth coming from the IRA and Sinn Féin about what happened during the Troubles. Meanwhile, the niece of a Belfast schoolgirl who died after being hit by a plastic bullet fired by a soldier also criticised the government's Troubles bill. Charlotte McCurry, whose aunt Julie Livingston was killed in 1981 at the age of 14, said truth and justice were vital for reconciliation and to allow people to move forward. No victims support this, and I don't think anybody wants an amnesty for those who were involved in murder during the Troubles, she said. Mrs. McCurry said her family had given up hope of ever getting justice, but she said files on the case had been locked by the government until 2064, which she said was unacceptable. By then, my aunt's brother and sisters will no longer be around, but we are determined to carry on the fight for Julie, she said. Mrs. McCurry joined a number of other relatives of victims at Westminster on Tuesday night for a production of victims' Sarah testimonies. It was hosted by the SDLP leader Colm Eastwood. We felt it was important to let MPs hear at first hand about the victims and how their families have suffered, in the hope it may influence how they vote on this bill, explained Mrs. McCurry.